Hi everyone, I'm Sarah from Sourdough for Beginners. I'm going to mix up a quick pizza dough today. I would like it to rise in time for supper, so I am going to add a little bit of commercial yeast. I'm also going to use active starter. The yeast is optional, but it's going to change the rise time from about an hour to 2 hours, all the way up to somewhere between 4 and 8 hours. So the way I'm going to teach it today is using the yeast, but you can just straight up get the yeast out of it and just use active starter and give your dough enough time to rise without the yeast, and that will work just fine too. At the end of the video, I'll put the full recipe and sort of let it play for a little while so you can take a screenshot, but for now I'm just going to go through it. So with active yeast, we want to use warm water, not hot. Our best temperature is about 105 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So I've actually just got my sink running right now, and I'm waiting for the water to warm up, and I'm just going to use my meat thermometer to test the temperature of the water, and when it's pretty close to about 105, I'm just going to grab a measuring cup full. So we're getting close here. And we are going to start with 175 grams of water. So this recipe I can do in both cups or grams. I'm, for ease today, going to do it with my scale, but at the end of the video when I post the recipe, I will post both cups and grams. So this isn't too bad. It's coming in at 109 degrees. So we're gonna go with 175 grams of water. My husband and I have been making pizza since before our sourdough days started. And ever since we started making sourdough, I've been trying to perfect the perfect pizza dough recipe, and I think I've got it now. I think I know all of the little things that matter to us. The one that sets this one just a little bit apart is that I do add some garlic and some basil right into the dough. And then later when we bake the dough, I brush it with olive oil and put a little bit of more garlic on, and also some parsley and basil. And I think just that little savory flavor makes it taste like real pizza. Okay, so we've got 175 grams of water. I might have said 170. We're at 173. And now I'm going to use 7 grams of yeast, which works out to about 2.5 teaspoons. So I'm just going to tear my scale back to 0 and sprinkle this on top. Yeast likes to dissolve to start to activate, and the warm water is what gets it activated. So I'm just going to put this in here like this and whisk it in a little. And I'm going to let it sit just for a minute or two. But another good way to activate your yeast is to add everything but your salt until the end, because salt sort of slows down yeast. So while the yeast is in my water in here starting to activate and dissolve, because I'm just using quick rise yeast. So quick rise yeast in most cases, as long as you mix properly, will give you a full double rise between an hour and 2 hours. So it really is quick when you think of the scheme of sourdough. Without the yeast, this is probably going to take more like 4 to 8 hours to rise. So we would like to have 240 grams of starter, which is a lot for my jar. I think I can get that much out of here without using it all up. But if I need to, I will grab some from my other jar. Let's see how far down in my jar that's going to take me with this starter. 199. Might need to grab my other jar. Let's see here. 222. Oh, we might be okay. Let's see what that puts us at. 230. That might be enough. 240. Okay. So that didn't leave me a lot left in my starter, but that's enough to keep a starter going. So after I'm done mixing the pizza dough, I'll show you refeeding the starter. So now I've got my water and my yeast in here. I've added my starter. I'm just going to get the starter to dissolve into the water. So I'm just going to use my whisk. So while we're doing this, the yeast is still activating. So with a regular yeast recipe that's not using sourdough starter, usually you would put the yeast into the warm water and let it dissolve for 5 or 10 minutes. And what happens is it starts to get foamy on top. It starts to smell really yummy. But with this pizza dough, you kind of have two rising agents. You have a lot of sourdough starter. 240 grams is a lot of sourdough starter for any recipe, especially since this one's only going to use a fairly small amount of flour. I've got 380 grams written down here. So I think we're gonna be okay. I'm not super concerned about the fact that I didn't wait that long for these to activate. So what I've done is I've whisked my sourdough starter into this, and it's almost like a very runny, like, what's the thin pancakes? What are they called? Help me in the comments if you know before I say it. What are those called? Crepes. That's the word I was looking for. We had a French exchange student stay with us last year, and she was here during their National Crepe Day in France and made us the most amazing crepes. It was amazing and fun, and I loved it. Okay, so now we are going to add 30 grams of olive oil. And I think that olive oil is like essential for pizza. And we're going to add about a tablespoon each of basil and garlic. So I've just got like a good quality garlic powder. So what did I say? Yeah, I just put a tablespoon. So I don't actually have a measurement for this, but I'm just going to sprinkle that on. And this basil is almost empty. Sprinkle that. I'll grab some of this one. And we're going to get that in there. And then I'm just going to blend those in a little. And then we will add our flour and our salt. Pizza dough not only is fun, but it's really easy. Oh, the basil and the garlic smell so good. So I've made, like I said, lots and lots of pizza doughs. I've made lots where the only spice that's in them is salt. And that's good, right? It tastes yummy. I do like it, but I just find that the garlic and the basil just add a little bit of extra flavor right into the dough. And then we put it on also when we cook it. So the next ingredient in the recipe is 380 grams of flour, which works out to about 2 cups. So I'm just going to turn my scale back to 0. 380 grams of flour. 360. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to add 6 grams of salt. So here we go. Same thing. I'm just going to turn my scale back to 0. 6 grams. There we go. Now I'm just going to use my spoon, as always, to mix this up as well as I can until it absorbs most of the liquid. And then I'm going to knead it a little. And then with this pizza dough, because I added the yeast to it, it'll be risen enough. So we want it to like really double in size, maybe even a little more than double. We want it to be nice and puffy and airy. We don't have to worry so much about overproofing with pizza dough. So I'm going to let it really double. So that's usually about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Then I'm going to like punch it down a little bit, split it into 2 and shape it into 2 pizzas. I think that my husband is planning on making our pizza on the barbecue stone tonight. So he's got like a round pizza stone. I'll paste one in the comments for you. And he gets it really hot as the barbecue will go. So it's starting to get warmer here in Canada now. We can't do pizzas as much in the winter because we're on the lake and it's cold and blowy and the barbecue won't hold enough temperature to do it. But now that it's starting to get warmer, he'll actually put the barbecue on the maximum heat that it will do and get that pizza stone super duper hot. And then we make the pizza inside the house here. And when it's ready, we put it on there like sizzling, steaming hot and let it cook for 8 to 10 minutes. And it makes it get that like sort of browned edges and bubbles on the crust and everything else. So pizza dough is not like sourdough. It's not nearly as sticky. So what I'm going to do with this is just turn it out onto the counter with this. And, you know, if you like a really thin crust, then you might want to add a little bit more water, a little bit more olive oil. If you like a thicker crust, then you might want to add a little bit more flour. You can adjust the dough for your pizza to what's going to work best for whatever it is that you're trying to do. We kind of go for medium. We like our pizza to be sturdy enough to be able to make the trip from the house out to the barbecue, you know, onto the barbecue, off the barbecue. So I keep it just a little bit thick. So you can see now I've got sort of a shaggy, floury dough. And what I'm going to do right now is knead this similar to the way you would knead traditional bread. And I don't know if you can see, but look at that basil in there. Looks amazing. It smells amazing. It's so good. So good. As soon as my husband asked me to make pizza today, I was like, you know what? I think I have to share this one in my discard recipe. So on YouTube, I have a discard recipe playlist, and I have a discard recipe ebook, and it's got pizza dough in it too. So if you prefer like a printable recipe, then the ebook might be for you. You might really like that. But I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people in the world who don't like pizza. And even if they don't like pizza, the people around them do. My daughter always says she doesn't want pizza because we eat it a lot. But it's just good, right? It's Saturday. We're huge dirt bike fans. It's the big Daytona race today. So my husband and I are just going to sit on the couch all day. And when we're hungry, a couple hours from now, this dough will have risen enough and we'll make a pizza. So I don't know if you noticed, but when I dumped this out of the bowl, there was like lots of loose flour. It almost felt, before I started working with it, and if you were inexperienced and hadn't ever experienced a pizza dough like this before, it almost seemed like it was going to be way too dry, right? It seemed like there was too much flour for the fact that there was only very little water. And once you added the starter in, it was quite thick, like a crepe mix, right? But the thing is, because we're going to knead this, as I'm kneading it, it's actually getting stickier. So with a yeast bread, this is a good workout. With a yeast bread, you are treating it just like a normal bread, right? Kneading, if you're more of a sourdough person, kneading effectively does the same thing to the dough that stretching and folding does, but you're able to do it because the dough isn't quite as sticky. So with kneading, all I'm trying to do is get the gluten structure to merge with the water, olive oil, starter, and start to really combine. And I want those gluten fibers to like get tangled up with everything else that's in there. So I usually say that you should knead for somewhere between 6 and 9 minutes. You can do this with a bread mixer. It's no different than any other dough. This dough is not as heavy as a bagel dough, but maybe not as light as a cinnamon roll dough, if that makes sense. So all I'm doing right now is just getting the dough to really incorporate. So my next steps after this, I'm going to take the bowl that I mixed in. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in there. I'm going to plunk this in and I'm going to let it rise on the counter for an hour or two until it's really puffy and doubled. Then I'm just lightly going to squeeze the air out of it, take it out, and treat it just like any other pizza. So I'll sort of record through the day today. But check out the basil in this. Doesn't that look cool? And the smell. It smells like garlic and basil. It's really good. All right, so as you can see, I might keep kneading this for another minute or two, but it's smooth. It's not sticky, right? But it is quite soft, right? It's going to form nicely into a pizza dough when I'm ready. And that's sort of the consistency that you're looking for. So stay tuned. In your world, it'll look like snap and I'm back, but I'm actually just gonna go rest for an hour or two and let this dough rise. Talk to you soon. Bye. I'm back again, but it's because I just remembered that I told you I was gonna refeed my starter and show you how to do that when you almost use it all up. So here's my bowl that I mixed in. And I don't know, I would say I just used my olive oil that I use for salad dressings and stuff with the skinny top. But I've just got like a bunch of olive oil in there. So I'm just gonna take my dough and set it in here. And then I'm gonna put plastic wrap on it. And I'm gonna just let it sit next to the stove to rise. So the plastic wrap, the covering is just to keep it from getting dried out while it's rising. So here it is, before we started, and I'll show you later. All right, so for my starter, I used a very large amount of my starter. You can see I only have just a very small amount left. So what I'm gonna do is give this starter a couple of feeds to rebuild it. So I'm going to put 75 grams of flour in and 75 grams of water. And then once it peaks, I'll probably do like 50 and 50 again, just to get back that volume that I like to keep on hand for how much I bake. So let's get 75 grams of flour in. $75 grams of water. Maybe just a splash more. And let's see how much this gives us. And then what I'll do is I'll show you the starter later. So when I come back later to show you the pizza dough risen and to not only show you the pizza dough risen, but to show you punching down the pizza dough and everything else, I'll show you the starter then. And I'm pretty confident that by the time I'm back on video doing that, this starter will have already begun to rise again. So even though I had only a very tiny little bit, I think it's gonna be fine and just rise again. This is quite thick right now. This is fine, but I just want it to be a little bit more smooth. So I just added a drop of water. So when you see starters, right, if you're working by cups, you always hear us say use half a cup of flour and a quarter cup of water. If you're going by grams, you know, we say use 50 grams of water, 50 grams of flour. To a certain extent, you should use your eye though, right? I mean, those precise measurements are there to help people who are trying to understand the science. But once you get comfortable with your sourdough starter and your doughs and with what's going on, you'll be able to sort of plan accordingly to what it is you're going to bake and everything else. So here's my starter, refed, and it's a little down from where I usually keep it now, right? It's down here. Usually I keep it up here. So I'm just gonna go sit this on the counter over beside where my pizza dough is and let it start doubling. And then I'll show you sort of how it's begun to rise by the time I pop back on to shape the pizza dough. Okay, see you soon. Hey everyone, I'm back. So we've got Supercross on. We are having a nice Saturday. We're relaxing. Our dough rose beautifully. So I showed it to you at the end of mixing it. And as you can see, it is now quite a bit bigger. My husband has started preheating the barbecue. I've got our toppings all ready. We're gonna go full Mediterranean tonight. I made us like a super yummy Greek salad with just 2 forks. We have no kids today. Everybody's doing something else. So Rick and I'll just share this together and eat it straight out of the bowl with some forks and eat ourselves some pizza. So I'm just going to show you like sort of how I get the dough ready to mix. And no making fun of me, I'm not a pizza expert. I can't like spin it or anything, but I am definitely going to get it into a decent shape and get some toppings on it. And then I will get it on the barbecue and get some shots of how it looks after it's done baking. I am cheating a little. I'm just using bagged mozzarella, packaged pizza sauce. This is garlic and basil. I wonder if this one is open. So we're very garlicky and basil-y today. I've got some nice fresh grated parm. I've got some pepperoni, some tomatoes, some onions. So we're gonna have a nice little snack. So here we go. It's really risen, and I'm just gonna use my fist and gently push the air out of it. Nothing crazy, right? Like I don't want it to be, you know, I don't want to be rough with it, right? We're not trying to force it into anything crazy. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of flour and I'm going to spread it on the counter here, right? And with pizza, you know, you can use a decent amount of flour. And the dough on the underside has lots of olive oil on it because we use that to line the bowl. And when it comes to pizza, I think that olive oil is great. Now, I'm just going to cut this in approximately half. We're going to make 2 pizzas. So I'm just going to sort of take 1/2 and set it aside. And then all I'm going to do for my pizza is just kind of like gently stretch and work it into as close to a circle as I can. So you can see the dough's got like, remember when we were mixing it, it started out like pretty stiff. Like when we were first mixing it, like when we first turned it out of the bowl onto the counter, it was like not absorbing the flour very easily. So when you first start mixing this recipe for pizza dough, it's almost going to seem like it's too much flour, but you should trust the process if you can, because by the time it's done rising, you have this nice stretchy pizza. So all I'm gonna do is make the bottom sort of really thin, make it as even as I can, just use my fingers, and I'm gonna leave the crust like kind of crunchy, or not crunchy, like chunky, because I like to have like a real crust. And then I'm going to grab a paper towel and I'm going to just pick this pizza up like this and set it onto some parchment paper, and I'll just show you that in 1 second. Make some room here. So I have this like metal pan, and we're actually just using the metal pan as like a carrier. So like I said, my husband has a pizza stone out on the barbecue getting as hot as it can possibly get, and he's just going to use this pan to carry it out, and then he's just going to slide the parchment paper right onto the barbecue. It usually burns because it's so hot, and parchment paper is only really rated to like 425 degrees, so I don't usually have any issues with getting it to do 450. So it will sort of burn, but we haven't found that it actually catches on fire. So let's get some sauce on here. We probably need something to spread our sauce, don't we? So this is like a pretty easy day, and it actually tastes really great. That's why I wanted to just make the video. Like, we were already going to do this for our supper today, and I said to my husband, do you mind? Like, you know, when I make these videos, everyone has to be a little bit quiet, and we also usually do it together. But I think that it's good to teach this. And the dough looks great. Like, you can see that basil that we put in gives the dough this sort of nice green fleck on it. So it's quite nice. All right, so I'm just gonna get my pizza all covered nicely in sauce. And I'm going to grab this, which I will need. All right, so let's get some toppings on. So I'm just going to put some cheese. We like lots, so I'll be a little bit generous, like this. So this is just like a nice stretchy pizza mozzarella. There we go. All right, so we're going to put some red onion on. Like this. And I've got some tomato, like this. And we'll put lots of pepperoni on. There we go. So there we go. And then I'll just put a little bit of this parm on top. Like that. Perfect. Okay. And then I just like to take a little bit of olive oil and just gently around the edges, just around the edge of the crust, put a little bit of oil. And then I just take a little bit of garlic powder on my thin setting and just garlic powder the edges. And then there we go. My husband's gonna bake this on the barbecue. So now I'll just shape the other one. And I'll just sit it on parchment paper. And then once that one's done, it'll go out. So here we go, we got our dough. And by the way, there's kind of like a dry side that was on the rye side and the other side's the olive oil side. It doesn't really matter, but I usually leave the olive oil side facing up. And you can make the pizza, you know, as thick or as thin as you like. So I tend to like mine like really thin on the bottom with a nice crust. So sometimes I'll make it so that it's like even so thin that it's like you would stick your finger through it. And that's why part of the reason why we use the parchment paper. We also don't have one of those big, like lifter things. So because of the fact that we cook on the barbecue, we often find it a little bit difficult to get it off the barbecue. So I find that the parchment paper helps us like that. So again, when you're making homemade pizza, right, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just kind of get it shaped, get yourself a nice crust. I like to sort of stand it up like this. There we go. Stretch it out a little. So you'll end up with like sort of thick spots and thin spots. I just sort of go over the thicker spots, pull them into the thin spots. And then I'm just going to take another sheet of parchment, like this. And then this pizza will sit and wait until the other pizza is cooked. So there we go. We'll just clean this up a little so that we can get some decorations on it. There we go. So as you can see, right, the dough is like so nice and pliable. So it does seem really thick at first when you first mix it, but trust the process and it'll be great. So we'll get some sauce on. And this one, maybe we'll try putting the toppings under the cheese. Let's see which one turns out better. Spread this around. Like this. Beauty. Make it nice and even. Perfect. Mediterranean Supercross sports watching day for us and our family. And it's so funny, like all we do is sports with the kids, and then on our days off when there's nothing going on, nowhere for us to be, we just end up watching sports. So with this one, I'm putting my toppings on before my cheese, and I'll put all the cheese on top. We love red onion, pepperoni, tomato. Our kids love pineapple. Yuck. Tell me in the comments, does pineapple belong on pizza or not? I don't know.
We watch True Detective too.
Not sure about pineapple, but apparently pineapple might only be a Canadian thing. So this one, I'm just going to pile a whole bunch of pepperoni on. Like this. There we go. And then we'll put our cheese on top. Beauty. Lots of cheese on this one. I think pizzas deserve cheese. There we go. Spread that around. Beauty. Perfect. It's so funny. I was just thinking when I was mixing this dough and you were watching, I was telling you that we had an exchange student from France with us, and that while she was here, it was their National Crepe Day. There's an actual holiday in France called, that's translated in English to National Crepe Day. I forget exactly what it's called, but I'll call Maddie and she'll tell me, and I'll put it in the comments or something. But The other thing was that she was half Italian, and we would go to order pizza or make pizza, and we would say, Maddie, how do you like your pizza? And she would say, the normal way. Here in Canada, we can have like a million toppings to choose from to put on our pizza, but the normal way is margarita, right? Just fresh tomato, some garlic, some basil, a little bit of the really good fresh mozzarella. Sometimes I can find that, but it's not always readily available here, and also it's not always as complicated as I want to make things. So I think this pizza for what Rick and I are doing tonight, a nice relaxing Saturday, is going to be perfect for us. So there we go. You watched the dough get mixed. You saw it after it was risen. You saw it worked up into some pizzas. Rick's going to get it cooked up for us on the barbecue, and then I'll get some good video and pictures after they're cooked and right before we eat them. Talk to you soon.
Happy birthday.